Oh, it might have been 2 or 3 weeks later or whatever.
Yeah, that, I'm sure that was something to see. I'm sure that was interesting to see right away.
No.
Let's see here.
So you wrote a book, huh?
Yeah, I wrote my life
Excellent.
story.
That's
Oh.
great.
Which, as I recall, but it covers the, you know, I think it started in the 1930s, and I was born in 1926. And when I was a youngster growing up, my dad truck farmed in Kansas, meaning crops like watermelon, cantaloupe, sweet corn, sweet potatoes, hoeing sweet potatoes. That's where I learned what it meant to have a long row to hoe, because they were a quarter mile long.
Yes, a quarter mile, 80 acres.
And so anyway, well, of course I was 17 years old, and I went to Wichita U to take a class, and that's when I decided I probably better go into the military, because there were 31-year-olds and myself in the class.
Oh.
And so then I joined the Navy shortly thereafter, and went up to Farragut, Idaho. And at that time...
Well, wait, should we wait, and do you have these kind of questions?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, something.
I want to
Well,
hear it, but
yeah.
he needs to get you on.
Yeah, I have this script. It just makes things easy. But first question is, when and where were you born?
And do you have it going then?
Yeah.
Oh.
Derby, Kansas.
Derby, Kansas.
There was 315 people there. At the time I was born, it's now about 12,000 people. It's just south of Wichita.
Really? And what year was that?
Hmm?
What year were you born?
Say again?
What year were you born?
Oh, 1926.
1926. Excellent. What were your parents' occupations?
Okay, of course that was at a time when women, it wasn't proper for them to work outside the home. But anyway,
Right.
my mother was a school teacher in the high school there. And then my father truck farmed because he went broke during the Depression. He ran a grocery store, and people would either charge things. And they had 2 or 3 little boxes, and they had everybody's charge account in there, and then they paid it, I suppose, once a month. But anyway, that went on. I had, as I say, one brother, and one kind of funny story, we'd be picking tomatoes, and he'd be on down the row maybe, 30, 40 feet, and I'd come to a tomato that had a spoil spot. I'd give it like this and throw it up in the air, and then it'd come down close to me. And then the other thing I remember about the truck farm, we rode our bicycles about 4 miles over there in the morning to go pick the crops. And anyway, we had sweet potatoes, and the rows were a quarter mile long. And I remember hoeing those, and that's where I learned what it meant to have a long row to hoe. But anyway, then I graduated from high school, and I was 17. At that time, the war in Europe was pretty hot and heavy. I didn't want to be in the infantry, which is what would have happened if I'd waited till 18, and boom, I'd go to Europe. So I enlisted in the Navy, went out to Farragut, Idaho. At that time, they were also doing the island hopping in the Pacific, referred to as amphibs, which was a device for getting from the ship to the island and landing. I didn't think I wanted to do that. Anyway, because of my half-year college, I got to go to weather school over in New Jersey. And I remember riding on a troop train from somewhere, Farragut, Idaho. We came through North Platte, which was a famous town for troop trains stopping there. And there's a lady that is here in the dining room. I eat with her quite regularly. And her parents would come up there, and the women would bring all sorts of things and we'd get off and get coffee and cookies, whatever. And then we went on, went back east. I remember going through Pittsburgh. Of course, there was a real shortage of men now. So when we went by the factories in Pittsburgh, all the women waved out the window, their hankies or whatever. You know, men were kind of in short supply. So we got on over to New Jersey, and the place the weather school was located was a former Catholic boys' school, and so it was a pretty nice place, a beautiful place. And I was there, I think, a couple of months, and then it was time to go off and do my duty. So anyway, they sent me down, and I was supposed to go on an aviation supply ship. And I didn't know what in the world I was supposed to do, so I called over Norfolk Naval Base. Well, they sent a full naval captain over there to see what in the world was going on. And he kind of treated me like a son. He said, "Son, I don't know why they put you on this ship. We'll send you over to Norfolk." And there I got assigned to an oil tanker. And I know that the first night out of Norfolk, and of course I was a weatherman, real important, you know. And so I rushed up to the bridge, and I had to go up along a catwalk. And we were set real low in the ocean, so it was only about 4 feet. We were loaded with fuel of some kind. And wave washed up over, and I charged up to the bridge, and I said, "When did we hit the storm?" And they said, "What storm?" Says, "It's always like this off of Cape Hatteras." Okay, so anyway, I was on this tanker. We go to, there's still at Holly Goose Creek in Baytown, Texas, still a lot of oil refineries there. And so we'd go in there and we'd get fuel oil or gasoline. If we got gasoline, or the smoking lamp was out, meaning you couldn't smoke, well, that put quite a stress on some of the fellows who smoked. And one time we got over there, north of Cuba somewhere, and submarines were around, but there was one that surfaced. We could see it off there, and I am guessing that it had run out of torpedoes and didn't have any. And of course they have to come up, at that time they had to come up and surface to charge their batteries. So we fired twin 5-inch guns at them a couple of times and they went down. And so not too long after that, we went out to the Atlantic. I think we went out to Bermuda. And not too long after that, the war in Europe ended. Well, then the old Sapelo got whatever it was on commission anyway. Then I went up to Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and went on a new aircraft carrier. And it's pictures over there somewhere.
Oh, really?
Anyway,
Yes.
that was pretty interesting. And anyway, on a carrier, the superstructure is over on the right or starboard side of the ship. And planes would come in to land, and the landing signal would also do this and this. Once in a while he'd give a wave off, and that meant they had to go out and come around again. Takeoffs were normally pretty routine. The only thing the captain had to watch for is sometimes that the plane would go off and most of them would drop down a little bit. But if they went boom in the water, which they did on occasion, then the captain had to decide whether to go, which way to steer to not go over him. Because if they went over the plane, well, the pilot would be gone. If they, made it, well, off they go. Well, and on landing, there was a landing signal officer stood back there, and he had little flags and had a little platform about the size of that table. And if it looked like a plane was going to hit there, why, I know in one day it was 90 feet to the water, and he just jumped over twice, and of course he always wore a life jacket. So that was what the landing signal officer did. Anyway, the planes came in and hit the resting gear normally and stopped. If they didn't catch the resting gear, then they'd go forward into the other planes. There were two elevators on the ship, one amidship and one over to the left side or port side. And that's what took planes below onto the hangar deck or brought them up onto the flight deck. And I think that pretty well covers that activity as far as that ship. I know when we went on the carrier, I need to tell about that one. We went down to Havana, Cuba, and I assume you've never been there.
No, I've heard of it though.
Anyway, at least back then, it was quite a sailor's town. And that means lots of women and lots of booze. Well, anyway, on a major ship like this, when at the gangway where people left the ship and came back aboard, you always had to have an officer and a rated enlisted man. The officer handled officers who were never a problem, and the enlisted man handled the others. Well, anyway, they brought the sailors back from town, and they were drunk. I mean, they were all laid out on the dock. And so he kind of looked at me and he said, well, I don't know what we're going to do. And I said, well, it's fairly simple. I said, they can't walk. Even if they could, they'd fall in the water. So I said, put a cargo net down, dump them in it, and put it up on the flight deck and sort them out later, so let somebody else sort them out. Okay, so that, I guess that done. Then we went through the canal, Panama, and came up to San Francisco, and we took aboard the president of the Philippines, who died in the United States during the war. And so then we went to the Philippines and went into Manila Harbor. We went in at night, and they were shooting off fireworks and all that sort of thing because the president was coming home who died here during the war. Well, not long after that, I went to an island just off of New Guinea. And anyway, I was a weatherman there. I had a follow me Jeep. Nobody ever followed me, but because we'd get a couple of planes a week. They just come in and land, and that was it. Well, anyway, when I went down there, we went down in a B-52, and I think it was what you call them, a makeup crew, meaning didn't fly regularly. They didn't do a very good job of planning. We flew 1,000 miles down there, and they flew down over the field, and they decided it was too short and too narrow to land a B-29. So we flew clear back to Guam, and this old plane was tired, and it was night by that time, and I listened to the pilots talk. Well, if we don't hit that place on the nose, they said we'll just have to ditch. Well, you don't want to ditch at sea at night if you can help it, because you can't tell what direction the wind's in and all that jazz. Anyway, we came around and landed, and the fire engines followed us and whatever. Anyway, then I came back home and got discharged. So that pretty well, that ended the Navy part of it. Okay. So next, I decided, well, I want to go to college, and which I did. I went to Kansas State and graduated from there. Well, anyway, by that time I was always interested in girls, but I was getting a little more interested. And so I went down to the local Presbyterian church, and at K-State there were 6 fellows for every girl, and the girls knew it. So anyway, I dated this one gal, and she kind of looked over the situation. She said, well, for this situation to continue, you're going to have to make a few changes. And I thought about that. I said, well, like what? I had a 42 Chevy, I think it was. Well, she said, I like Fords, and I like chartreuse green, and I'd like it to be a new one. And so not very long after that, I transferred down to college, a Methodist college in southeast of Wichita, southeast of Wichita, at Winfield. And I went there for a semester, and that's where I ran into my wife, which, her picture's over there somewhere. So I'd go down from K-State about once a month. It was about a 4-hour drive. But then I'd get up about 3:30 in the morning on Monday morning, because I had a 7 o'clock class when I got back. And so I'd do that. And anyway, eventually I got married, and I had a job in Missouri teaching veterans farm training, which if you were in service, you could take something like that, or you could go to college. I went to college on, essentially, I got a monthly stipend, and I didn't have any financial problems at all. But anyway, that pretty well took care of the thing. My wife and I got married, when she graduated from college, and I took her off to Missouri. I'd been down there one year teaching veterans farm training. She came down, and I said, I don't know what her parents thought. I came along and took their only daughter, ran off to the Missouri Ozarks, and we lived in a log cabin. And one day, this cabin kind of built on the hillside, and there was this shelf rock there. Well, anyway, she opened the cabinet door down here, and this bull snake crawls out.
Nice.
Well, she had dealt with bull snakes because they like to get into hen's nests and eat the eggs. So that wasn't bothering much. She took the butcher knife and whacked his head off and threw it out back so the arrow can have it when he gets home. And then I went out to school of the Ozarks, which is, it's now College of the Ozarks. And I was there about, I guess 4 years, something like that. I handled everything agricultural except the dairy herd. Beef cows, the garden crop, we tried to grow a lot of vegetables and that sort of thing for the kitchen there. Well, anyway, one evening we were at the junior senior banquet at the school, and somebody came and told me that the president of the college had a bull, and the president emeritus, who was still there, he had a bull. And so I told my helper, I said, get some of the boys, we'll go down to the farm and we'll kill the older bull and string him up and quarter him out, bring it back to the locker plant, and the fellow will make hamburger out of him. We did that. All right, that pretty well covered the time in Missouri. We moved to, well, I worked a little while for International Harvester, which was a bad idea because I couldn't sell anything. I could fix most anything, I couldn't sell it, so they let me go. And then I went back to Manhattan, and then took my college work there, some more of it. And anyway, eventually I went to Norfolk. We lived at Norfolk for a couple of years. Went to Plattsmouth, managed the refuge there. While I was at Plattsmouth, one morning I went into church and somebody said, say, did you hear about those prisoners escaped and went over to, they're out here on your refuge? I said, no, I hadn't heard about that. So I went out there, and they had a helicopter, and we cut fences and ran around there. It didn't take them long to find them. They went over the bank by the Missouri River, and they found them there and took them wherever they needed to take them. Well, we lived there, Lincoln, and here I still work in the Game and Parks Commission, which I worked for 35, 36 years, something like that. And I did a lot of things, mainly on wildlife management areas, which were areas you could fish or hunt on, that sort of thing. And so I retired from there, and my wife died about 2.5 years ago of cancer, and I believe her mother died of cancer, but she was quite a little older. Rivera was not all that old. But okay, where are we?
Do you want to ask?
I'll ask a couple questions. So, you told us where you served and everything. When you got discharged, was that at the end of the war?
No, when I went in at 17, I had to go into the regular Navy. Well, I didn't have to. I could have gone into the reserve. If I'd taken the reserve, I'd have been discharged when the war was over. But I went to the regular Navy, so I had to stay in longer until I was 21.
All right. So what year was that? What year were you discharged?
Well, it had been when I was 21. That would be
47?
Hmm?
You were born in 26, right?
Yeah.
So it would be 1947.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a couple years after the war, I guess, ended. So, where were you when the war ended? When the war ended? You were still in the Navy. Do you remember where you were?
Well, I think that we were in a port probably on the East Coast, and they were preparing us to go to the Pacific on that tanker, which would have been a loser. But the war was over, so that I came off of that ship, and that's when I went on to the aircraft carrier up at Quonset Point, Rhode Island.
So, was returning to college, was that easy for you? Because you said you wanted to go to college, so.
Yeah, well, by that time I had been to college. So.
Oh, right. Yep. How did the experiences in the military affect your life?
Well, it expanded my world travel
Yeah.
for a little bit. And at this point I haven't been to Russia, I've been to Europe, flew over England. My wife and I went over there and went on a cruise on a river in Germany. But that was, she was still alive then. And so we were over there. So when I need to tell about in the U.S. or say New York City, ladies of the night, they just kind of gather on the corners, and people are looking for them and they know where to find them. But over there, apparently the ladies of the night, they wore just a shift, which is a very thin dress. There was nothing under it. And so if you looked at them, you could see everything. And this is how they advertised their wares and that sort of thing. And very little different in New York, except they weren't in these sheer dresses, whatever you call them. But that was in Germany.
Let's see. Do you have any life lessons learned from when you were in the military?
Well, I suppose, I'm pretty young, so I guess that I learned that you need to be pretty careful on who you chose for your friends. I doubt that that's much of a problem in high school. You just naturally gravitate to either boys or girls that, have similar interests and that sort of thing. But that's about what I remember of that.
Well, let's go back to the military. What were some of the recreational things you did in the military, or like off-duty pursuits?
Well, of course, if you're on a ship, essentially at the time you go ashore, sometimes I guess you come ashore and get a 2-week leave or that sort of thing. But I don't remember what we might have done. You say, what was your question?
Just what you did in your spare time, like when you weren't on duty. Like waste time, you know, goofing around on the ship or whatever.
Well, of course, on a ship, I'd say usually we're fairly busy. A lot of difference if you're on a ferry. I don't know how many people you had on there, probably 2,600 or something like that.
Jeez.
But they'd have movies or that sort of thing. I know when we were on an island, why, about once or twice a week we'd get a film, and you know that. But as I remember when I was on Los Negros, food was not very good. I think mainly I lived on. They always had things at the mess hall, but it was awful. And so I mostly used a chocolate drink that you could buy, and that and Coke. And so I lost a lot of weight because I didn't eat much in the dining room. But I remember that part of it. While I was at Los Negros, a plane would go down to Australia, maybe once a month, and I never did go because, well, number one, the main reason they went down there was to get booze and to find girls. And
All right. That's what you did on the island?
never tell them. That's what I remember from being on the island.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about the island? Like, you told us on the island there's girls and booze. Those are the main things, but how are the interactions with people on the island like different just from the U.S.?
Well, on the island I was on, the natives were all black, and I'd say that it would essentially we didn't have any contact with them. The fellows that were there, as I remember, sailors, I don't know whether they've changed it and what they used to be or not, but they didn't want to fiddle with the girls there because they had all sorts of sexual diseases.
Right.
And so I don't know that many of the fellows got involved with that, but they did on occasion get to make an illegal booze of some kind or another. I know when we went back up to Guam, they'd made some illegal booze, and the fellow had internal bleeding, and they'd keep saying, well, go down to 2,000 feet. Well, go back up to 11, and I don't know whether he made it or not, but anyway, that's what I remember. They had food in the mess hall, but it was not very good. I lost a lot of weight.
Oh, really? They didn't have any food on the island that you'd eat? Did they have any food on the island?
I don't think so, unless you eat coconuts.
Oh, right.
I brought one of those home, drained the milk out of it and sent it home. Of course, there wasn't any place to go to get any food. That was there, that was it.
Right. Since being in the military, have you kept contact with fellow veterans or been a member of veterans organizations?
I would have to say probably no. The one friend who was about my age came from Binghamton, New York, and he died several years ago. I think he was younger than I did. I wouldn't be surprised when he had cancer, but who knows. But he was the one friend that I remember that, you know, I continue to write to and that sort of thing. But I'd say that as a general rule, I didn't have a lot of real close friends. When was it? Well, I think there was a movie on about, you know, blacks and, oh, it was a book I was reading about blacks in the South. I know that the feeling against Negroes was real strong. We had one black fellow on our ship, on the oil tanker, and oh, we'd visit, but the other fellows didn't like that much that I visited with him. He was the only black fellow on there. And anyway, that's about all I remember about that situation.
Well, one more just kind of question. How do you define freedom?
Well, the privilege or opportunity to do what you wanted to do, assuming you were somewhat virtuous in what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I suppose the freedom Americans experience, maybe as opposed to somewhere else where the government decided everything for you. I think that U.S. citizens generally, you can do what you want to do as long as it's not against the law. You can make of yourself something or nothing. And if you don't remain within the law, you figure a better way around it, well, you're probably going to run into a problem eventually. And so I suppose freedom to choose what you wish to do in life, and that, of course, depends on the, what do you call it, well, if you're good at math, you're good at math generally. Some people are very good at it. Others, they're not so inclined to the, let's say, hard sciences. They prefer other areas of endeavor, want to be a lawyer, or that sort of thing. Of course, people that, you know, some people, like the lady I eat meals with quite often, she and her husband had a cattle ranch out in North Platte, and they sold a lot of cattle, and he's passed on now, but I knew him quite well. But I think that they no doubt enjoyed the opportunity to do that, and I think you can more or less do what you're inclined to do within, as long as you realize that each person probably has, you know, you've probably got a classmate that's a whiz in math, or you've got somebody that is good in public speaking or something like that. Well, off they go sometimes and choose a career where public speaking is, well, if you're a politician, well, there's help. Others will go into teaching, that sort of thing. And, I've got a son that, well, he went to Stanford University, and he he worked for Goldman Sachs in New York. And he never mentions anything about what he actually does, because he can't do that. And but he's worked for Goldman Sachs for quite a number of years. He lives in New Jersey, and when the planes hit the Twin Towers, we talked to him. We called him when he was on his cell phone, and we were watching TV, my wife and I, and one plane come around here and run into the first tower, and we told him about it, and he said, "Oh, well, I think at first you thought that was an accident." Well, it wasn't an accident, it was intentional, because then here came around the other one, and they ran into the other tower. And my wife and I were both up in those towers before those planes hit them. And I think they were both right at 101 stories or something like that. But
When were you in the Twin Towers?
Hmm?
When were you in the Twin Towers? Before?
In where?
You said you were in the Twin Towers before they were hit.
Oh, it would have been probably a couple of years before they got knocked down.
Right.
Because, you know, I remember going up in them. I think one of them was 101 stories and another was 102 or something like that. They were very, very similar. But I don't think they replaced them. There's some kind of a memorial thing there where they were located.
I think they're building new ones, but they have a memorial too. Anyways, one more question. Do you have any advice for young people in general nowadays?
Well, I think that in one fluffy sense, the whole world is open to you. Now, this is going to be limited by your talents and interests. You conceivably might have an interest and skill to go into be a doctor, medical doctor. Somebody else might be. Well, the time was where women were thought to be the people who ought to teach students. That wasn't too much men's job. Well, obviously it is now. Men teach, and as well as women. So I think that world is open to you. It's also open to you to make a mess of your life. In other words, if you get a taste for alcohol that becomes an obsession, well, you're probably going to have a problem. And I think that, of course, another thing, I think most men and women are going to be interested in a person of the opposite sex. In other words, to get married and probably have a family. And that's fine and dandy, but the things you look for in a life mate probably make quite a little difference. If you get somebody that has no common interest with you, no interest in, say, college education, they just want to go to work in the 5 and dime or whatever. And of course that is nice, because you don't have to go to college. Well, that's probably a very unwise course to go. You man or woman, you need to take some training to be of value in society, which will earn you a good income and provide for a family that is probably the normal thing for a person to do is to get married and have children if they can. Well, that's about how I look at that.
I mean, this is not a personal question. Are there any things you wish you could have done, looking back?
What's this?
Any things you wish you could have done, looking back?
Well, I don't know that I think of any things I should have done that I didn't. I think that when it came to college, I think you need to, well, they do testing, I think, now to see what your skills are, and this more or less helps you to, fit the slot or get somewhere. I don't think it's a good thing to, well, I can go down to the local department store or grocery store and I can get a job there, and that way I won't have to go get all this education stuff. It costs a lot of money and takes a lot of effort and time. But that's not a very wise course to go, because you don't need too many farmers. Even that is complex this day and age. You got machines that do a lot of things you used to do by hand. And well, I think that getting an education and taking that branch, past high school, what is going to be your focus? What do you want to do in life? As I say, some may be drawn to the medical field, others not. And that's kind of how I would see that.
Well, that's about it.
I think that I think most men and women, young men and women today have figured out that they need to probably go to college, get a job, skill of some sort that they can market, whether that be teaching or any great number of things. In other words, prepare yourself to be a competitor in that mix.
Yeah, that's about all I got. You pretty much covered everything. Covered everything. Well, I have these forms here that you have to sign just to verify that you got interviewed and all that.
Okay,
All the stuff. Let me go for the chair.
I'll come right here.
We got